what if your spouse doesn't want to save the marriage with you, and what do you do about that? That's the content for this series. My name is Lee Balcom, and I'm the Internet's leading marriage expert, and we want to tackle that question today. What do you do if your spouse doesn't want to save your marriage? Now let's face it, a marriage is much easier to save if both of you want to. It just makes sense. If both of you want it, it's almost impossible not to save it. I've had people who come in and said, can my marriage be saved? And I said, if you both want to work on it, there's no way I can, a bad therapist could save your marriage. And if neither of you want to work on it, then a good marriage therapist couldn't do anything about it either. So if both of you want it, then it's impossible not to save it. But my guess is that you wouldn't be watching this video. And that's rarely the case, actually, with people that come talk with me. Usually one is more interested than the other is in saving that marriage, and sometimes only one is interested at all. The other is completely disinterested. So first of all, let's just say that it's not impossible to save a marriage just because only one person wants to save it. Many times only one wants to, and the marriage is saved. To be honest, at some point, the reluctant one has to join the process. It only makes sense. At the beginning, it doesn't matter if both are not wanting to save it, but at some point, that other person is going to have to join the process. It's just part of the deal of a marriage, being with two people. That doesn't necessarily have to be right now. Having both people in at the same time does not have to be true at the beginning, in spite of what other people have said. You can save a marriage even if only you want to. If you want to save your marriage, I say give it a try, even if you are alone in doing that, because if it's important to you, then you should honor your convictions to try to save that marriage, and don't allow yourself to be discouraged if things aren't going the way you want them to be. That's just part of the issue of this, is you have to be able to stay and keep your head in the game and not get too discouraged by it all. So let's talk about some things you don't want to do if you're trying to save your marriage by yourself. First of all, don't pressure, cajole, shame, force, or manipulate your spouse into trying to save the marriage. That's not going to work. They may finally act like they're doing something, but it's only to get you off their back. There should be no pressure applied if they say, I don't want to work on this. In fact, when you apply pressure, you only add to the resistance that somebody feels in trying to keep from saving the marriage. So don't pressure, don't shame them, don't force, don't cajole, don't manipulate. Let them be. Don't try to drag them into therapy if they're not willing to go, or try to get them to read a book, listen to tapes, etc. I've heard enough about people who have had the books thrown in their face, the tapes thrown in their face, to know that that is only putting up brick walls that are going to be very difficult to get down. And finally, don't try to read the tea leaves. What I mean by that is when we're in a crisis, we begin to try to read into the things we see. And read the tea leaves is what the gypsies used to do to tell fortunes, and they would just swirl around the tea and look at what they saw in there and try to tell a fortune. Well, sometimes we see something our spouse does. Does our spouse not hold our hand, or does our spouse have a certain look on their face, or we do something that's trying to read the tea leaves. We're trying to imagine what they mean by what they're doing, and that's always very dangerous. So don't try to read the tea leaves. Let be what is, and don't try to figure out what your spouse is thinking all the time. Sometimes we just have to face the fact that we have to take things at face value. So now let's talk about some do's. If you want to save your marriage and you're in it by yourself, here's some things you're going to want to do. First, read about how to save a marriage. Can't go to therapy? Well, go to the experts. Go to talk to people who know what and have done this before. Go read their books. Go read my material. Go read other people's materials, because if you're reading about marriage, if you're listening to the audios yourself about marriage, if you're applying it yourself, that's the most you can do at this point. You need to find a way of getting extra information. Albert Einstein said that you can't get out of a problem using the same thinking that got you into the problem. So you've got to change your thinking. You've got to add some new information into it so that you can move forward and find some different ways of intervening. Act on what you read, though. Don't just read. A lot of people have books stacked beside their bed, and they've read and read and read and read, but they don't apply them. So you're going to have to apply that if you want to. Then take some time to relax and decompress, because this is a stressful time. You need to take it easy and kind of let your body have some time to relax, and find someone to share with, but make sure you choose wisely. It shouldn't be a family member. It shouldn't be a friend, because if you save your marriage, your spouse is going to have to come back to that person and be able to show their face. So choose wisely who you're going to share with. And if you want to learn more about saving your marriage, go now to www.savethemarriage.com. That's www.savethemarriage.com.